And welcome back, everybody. We are here for our third stream match of Week 3, Day 2 of Victory Road World Cup, sponsored by Metafi, GG Tour, and of course El Gato, myself and Costa. And I am joined by the ever so lovely Mr. Evan Wang. How are we doing, Evan?
Hi. Oh man, we're doing the direction thing again. I don't know if I'm getting it right, but I'm doing really well. And this has been such a exciting and like explosive broadcast of matches so far. And I can't wait to jump into the next one because both of the players, I kind of know them.
I mean, that adds just to the hype as well, especially when you know them. And I think it'll be a great sort of representation as well of a match between Vietnam and Belgium. We've got, of course, Lon Nguyen from Vietnam versus Niels Hemel. And it's going to be quite exciting because at the moment, Vietnam is 4 wins against 2 for Belgium. So it's not over at all. We're at the sort of cusp, Evan, of you just need that one more win, right? For Vietnam to be able to go ahead and officially win out the week. But Belgium is not giving up, and they will try to pull out all of the stops.
Yeah, so this is the situation in this group. The group, I'm checking my slide. So sorry. It's group.
That's okay. I believe it's Group F, correct?
F, right? Yeah. So we have Peru, who has 2 wins, and then both Belgium and Vietnam lost to Peru. Then on the opposite end is Dominican Republic. Both Belgium and Vietnam won Dominican Republic. So these are like the twin brothers, and now they have to fight. But if Belgium is really still not out yet, because if Belgium were to tie and achieve the 4-4 in these last 2 remaining matches, the score kind of favors them, and then Vietnam would be out. So the match that we're going to watch has the highest stakes possible, for this group, and I'm excited to jump into this.
Oh my lord. And it will be, well, I mean, if that didn't hype you up enough, ladies and gents, you might as well get turned up even more, especially with the display of the teams as well that are going to be seen in this matchup too. Of course, we do have a bit of archetype build-ups that we could check over, and we saw that at least Vietnam were kind of pretty much sticking on to the meta picks that you would expect. You kind of want to be able to play it a bit more safe, be a bit more aware, because there are so many things that could come out from the meta nowadays that could just attack you from nowhere, and you have to be well versed and aware of and be able to predict it. So, of course, we do have Lon Nguyen, which is going to be representing Vietnam. Currently, they are 1-0. So they took part in week 1, where they did actually use, I believe, Cortex's Talonflame team, and that was from an American regional a couple of months back right now. They did actually have a record of 4-0, undefeated in last year's World Cup, so they did quite well for themselves there.
Yeah, I know Long to be a very hardworking player. And here's another fun fact. Like in last year's run, Vietnam actually managed to qualify into the group stage, but unfortunately couldn't get out, losing to Netherlands and New Zealand. But Long in particular, he actually used, back then in Series 10, we have 1 restricted and no max. He actually used 4 different restricteds for all 4 matches. And he won them all. So what an amazing accomplishment. On the other hand, we have Niels Hemel. Niels is from Belgium and is a relatively new player. He joined in the COVID period. In 2021, naturally, he didn't play in the World Cup, but got chosen into the Belgium team for 2022, and currently he's at a record of 1-1. So that's actually very healthy. In week 1, he used Sasha Nivelta, and in week 2, he used Luna Dawn, and it's actually the team that we are seeing on the screen right now. So I think he's sort of leaning towards comfort. Like you said earlier, with all the team archetypes we saw in the web page, I think the players from both these teams, because this is the match that matters for both of them, Vietnam and Belgium. And I think using teams that have more or less stable like matchup into the rest would make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think that definitely will make sense. I think you've just got to be a bit cautious. I'm not sure if these look
these teams
same teams from last stream, so we may need to just adjust that if that is not the situation. But don't worry, everybody. We are going to be able to give you the proper visuals just right now when we will be hopping into the game.
match.
Yeah, very shortly. But I think this will be very hyped because, like you said, right now.
I'll be able to real quickly read the teams out. Yeah, so Niels my mistake. He actually used Calyrex Ice Palkia, which is the team that Justin Burns used to get top 4 in the most recent North America NAIC. You guys saw these teams if you stuck around just now during the break. And then for Long's team, a little bit unconventional with dual weather, but with Calyrex Ice Kyogre, and then Taco Venusaur, and Indeedee and Tornadus. So a very interesting throwback to the early days of Series 12. This could be a team that we see pretty often in January, actually.
Yeah, and it has a bit of a feeling of a Tor v Frankfurt sort of team, right? We've got the situation of the dual weather mode, and that being the Kyogre, the restricted, and you got that Venu-Coal sort of mode that you can attach to it. Of course, you have the Tornadus, that makes sense. And then all of a sudden, you do have that spin, like you mentioned, Evan. You've got the Calyrex Ice Rider with that female Indeedee. You want to try to guarantee any potential Trick Room setup. So you've got so many different modes. But of course, we have to make note that this team, Niels may be able to predict it a bit better based on the pairings. There are some dedicated pairings that you would naturally expect. So I think Lon has to be a bit cautious on not giving too much of their strategy away. But that might be a bit of a situation that you can't avoid, especially with the kind of leads you go with.
Yeah, so both players I know to be really hardworking and really want to strive for this win for their countries. And we actually have an exciting Calyrex Ice mirror in front of us. But from the leads, we don't see the Calyrex Ice come out. Let's see how things play out.
Yeah, exactly that. We see, of course, the Venu-Coal versus the Palkia and Porygon 2, which the Porygon 2 is trying to be a Venusaur from what it looks like. It's traced the Chlorophyll ability, so it will be doubling its speed right now within the set weather, of course, being sun. But we do have a situation where there's no fake out pressure, Evan, and we got the Venusaur potentially allowing and opening itself up to go for Sleep Powder to kind of slow down their opponent's sort of strategy going into this.
Yeah, such an interesting situation. Like the speeds are sandwiched here. Like you would think maybe for Niels you wouldn't want to set up Trick Room because Taco is already presented to be on the field. But instead, switching out into the Tapu Fini, what a smart play to prevent any possibilities of Sleep Powder. But does Long actually predict that?
Yeah, exactly that. Being able to have that mist terrain now on the field is so good. It does stop that status-inducing, any sort of status-inducing moves going on. But then we got the switch up from Lon's side saying, you know what? I'll match you with terrain switches. I'll bring my own female Indeedee. Tortle being the slowest Pokemon on the field means that terrain will be guaranteed to be set up. And that is quite nice. But, of course, we don't even see a Sleep Powder tactic going on. We just go ahead and see that Venusaur going for the G-Max. It may be setting up a Vine Lash here. It may even be going into that Fini slot, which could be quite bad for Niels' side, because that would be borderline a very amazing prediction or just a guarantee to get that damage over time set up.
Yeah, okay, goes into the Palkia. Not too bad, seems like a middle ground play. But you were saying earlier from team preview that, all these pairs would come into effect. And it seems like this, wow, that was an avoid, right? From Hydro Pump, if I'm not wrong. So I was saying, it seems like from this kind of team composition from Long, he seems to be able to catch Niels in the form of his leads with the Torkoal and Venusaur. And right now, with an immediate Dynamax being able to put on so much pressure onto the opposing team, and this Tapu Fini kind of wouldn't want to stay on the field at all.
Yeah, exactly that, and I think it's already such a sort of threatening situation for Niels, as we do see the Vine Lash goes into that Tapu Fini, does pick up the KO, and of course, because of that Vine Lash secondary effect being set up there, this Palkia is guaranteed to be going down at the end of the turn, but we even see the female Indeedee outspeeding it, going for that expanding force in Psychic Terrain, which does mean it is going to be boosted. It does have the potential of being a spread type move right now instead of a singular move, target move outside of that Psychic Terrain. And all of a sudden, Evan, we're in a 4 versus 2 scenario, and a Venusaur that doesn't want to slow down.
Yeah, so those speed interactions might be interesting. It might also hint that Niels wanted to use the Palkia to set up Trick Room, but Long doesn't take the bait, right? The Indeedee doesn't go for Follow Me and goes straight for the expanding force to ensure the KO. Because you might think, like there's Vine Lash active on the opposing field, maybe the Indeedee doesn't have to do much, but going straight for the KO to prevent any possibility of Trick Room for the Calyrex, like we see switch in to make an impact in the battle. At the same time, we're also seeing Porygon trace the Chlorophyll ability, so if the Porygon carries a move like Eerie Impulse, that could be useful if the Porygon 2 can make an impact by being fast. And right now, like you said, with this 4 versus 2 scenario, Niels will have to really dig deep and trust the Calyrex in terms of its bulk.
Yeah, and you've got to be cautious, of course, that Niels does have that Dynamax available to themselves, which is kind of what we're seeing the animation for right now. It could make sense to try to go for a Max Guard if you're scared of taking damage from that G-Max Venusaur, and potentially going for that Trick Room setup if you are Niels on their side. But doing that play is quite dangerous because we've seen that, at least from Lon's side, the Torkoal is in the back, as we're going to be seeing that Indeedee go for the Protect now.
Wow, going for Protect and not opting to go for the Follow Me. And let's see what this Venusaur does. He calls the Max Guard. Venusaur goes for the Vine Lash, which is important damage into the Porygon 2. And I think it does make sense for the Porygon 2 to go for Trick Room, as we do see right here, to just allow the Calyrex Ice to go online and start dishing out damage, especially after it wasted that first turn of Dynamax by Max Guarding.
Yeah, exactly that, and I think it's good that Calyrex Ice Rider is in this situation. This does mean, of course, that it will be changing the weather if it does, of course, decide to go for Max Hailstorm. It can be dealing a lot of damage. We have to remember that Lon does have that female Indeedee on the field available for redirection. The Porygon 2 may probably go for maybe a recover here right now. Maybe guarantee that it can have enough HP for any sort of oncoming Torkoal in the following turns. But of course, that's going to be left to be found out, as that female Indeedee does go for the Follow Me.
Yep, Follow Me naturally redirecting the Hailstorm, not wanting the Venusaur to take damage from this crazy big horse in front of the Venusaur. And I saw the Venusaur lock into the Sleep Powder move, which is the correct thing to do, right? The correct flowchart to do in this situation. Indeedee actually survives from Max Hailstorm, so this Indeedee would hint to be built very physically defensive, and the Sleep Powder goes into the Calyrex. One thing I quickly want to note is that, like, this is the power of Venusaur we see right in front of our eyes, because Long basically brought Venusaur, Torkoal, Indeedee, and we haven't seen the last Pokemon, and Venusaur single-handedly took down the Palkia and now cripples the Calyrex in front of us.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think in this situation, with regards to resource management, unfortunately, it hasn't been the best right now from Niels' point of view. Lon's just been able to pretty much just feel more comfortable in this scenario. Like you said, Evan, having that Sleep Powder focus and potential of connecting with the Calyrex there is really good. Female Indeedee surviving is so good. And we're actually going to be seeing Lon opt to switch it out, maybe save it for a future turn, and bring in the Torkoal right now.
Yeah, Long is saying, I don't want to waste any more time. I don't want to waste any more precious turns of Trick Room. Let me quickly bring this Torkoal in, because I know that the Calyrex is going to take that first turn of sleep. So the Torkoal comes in a beautiful position. Sleep Powder actually misses on the Porygon 2, but I think that doesn't really matter because the Torkoal is now just free to go for that spread damage. Like, spread fire damage versus spread ice damage. Unfortunately, the little Torkoal here has the upper hand.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like you said, there's just a lot of pressure coming out from Lon's side of the field. I think with probably 2 to 3 Trick Room turns still remaining right now, they're in a good situation to at least put that pressure on. Torkoal naturally being slower than a Calyrex. But of course, we see the Calyrex wakes up and goes for the Protect.
Yeah, turn 1, pretty lucky, but that kind of stalls one turn. That kind of gives the Porygon 2 an opportunity to do some chip damage into the Torkoal in hopes to reduce. Wow, that was a critical hit, but that just shows how bulky Porygon 2 is, and it does something absolutely that it should do, and goes for the Eerie Impulse, because Torkoal is essentially the Pokemon that, has only one job, which is to remove the Ice type on the field.
Yeah, I think so. And in this situation, you've been able to sort of disrupt the Porygon 2. Even though it's tried to disrupt the Torkoal, at least the Torkoal moved first. So it is open to being switched out right now, if of course Lon decides to do so. You got to take into consideration there's one final turn of Trick Room remaining. So Lon may want to try to get a more beneficial board state going for a sort of outside of Trick Room scenario, as we are to be seeing the Venusaur now switching out and revealing Lon's final 4th Pokemon being a Calyrex Ice Rider of their own.
Yeah, super well said. So in this position, like both Porygon 2 and Calyrex Ice on Niels' end are just very bulky and very like known to be able to stall out endgames. But the good news is that Long still has 4 Pokemon, so he has a lot of tools in that aspect, and a very smart switch of the Calyrex for the Venusaur, right? Preserving the Venusaur probably for next time when the Trick Room expires, and now it comes down to sleep turns. I think if Long's Calyrex is able to threaten the Porygon 2, then the game would be much simpler towards the end game for Long.
Well, yeah, and I think just being able to position yourself as well as Long has, forcing that yawn onto the Calyrex Ice Rider, and you know, it's making Niels unable to move right now. Although we saw the Porygon 2 wake up and go for the foul play, was quite beneficial, at least for Long. He will be going ahead and picking up likely a KO right here onto the Porygon 2, dealing a bit of chip damage onto that Calyrex whilst getting a +1 in its attack due to that chilling Nene. So even though the Calyrex Ice Rider right now on Niels' side can still go for an offensive move, it does try to target down that Torkoal, but is only met with the Protect. It will be put to sleep and have a guaranteed turn of sleep the following turn.
Yeah, I would say perfect call and perfect few turns being played out. Being able to go for the yawn onto the Calyrex to put it on a timer and call that the Calyrex is going to go for high horsepower into the Torkoal slot really just put Long in such an advantageous position. For 2 turns in a row, Long's Calyrex Ice is moving before Niels'. So there could be a hint that the Long's Calyrex is built to be faster, and that can be important information for future turns. Torkoal just going straight for Eruption because it knows that it does Eruption the best, even at -2 special attack, and Long is able to get this win, I think, pretty comfortably in terms of how he played.
Yeah, I think so. I think it was quite unfortunate for Niels, wasn't it, in that lead? I think the lead was quite crucial to kind of get there. You had a lot of offensive potential chance coming out from both the Venusaur, G-Maxine, or going for Sleep Powder, so you've got the sort of stats to take into consideration. The Porygon 2 was a bit scared, said, you know what, no. Let me just bring Tapu Fini right here, stop any sort of Sleep Powder shenanigans. But Lon was like, no, you thought Sleep Powder's a potential choice? Sure, but I'm just going to go for damage. I want to set up vines right now. I want to deal with that Palkia. I do not want that Palkia to have any sort of room to move around with. And that's essentially what we saw. And unfortunately, I guess there was a Hydro Pump miss into the Female and DD, but it didn't look like it was a Focus Sash that would have mattered. Maybe the remaining HP would have meant that the Female and DD went down to that max Hailstorm that we saw around turn 4, turn 5. That could have come into play. It was still Sun available on the field, so I'm not sure if Hydro Pump would be enough, but then again, it's Palkia. It makes sense. It might have just been in. But there was also worth noting that I believe the Female and DD didn't actually take hail chip damage from what I saw.
I didn't really notice that. But one thing I really wanted to shout out is that there could be a possibility, thinking all the way back to the very first turn in terms of the leads, that Palkia could have Dynamaxed, right? Because Niels already prepared to switch the Tapu Fini in. Not like maybe the Indeedee might not come, you never know. But if on that turn 1 in the previous game, if Palkia Dynamaxed, it could have been a very different game, as Palkia is able to now hit probably a Max Geyser, right, to set the weather up. So Niels in game 2 here at the start feels comfortable with the Porygon 2 and Palkia lead and leads it this way, but Long actually switches it up.
Yeah, and it's a 50-50, right? And that's what you've always got to be aware of. And Niels just trying to be a step ahead. Didn't work out for game 1, but let's see what happens in this game 2, as we are going to be seeing the switch out. Now Sun is on the field, as well as that cute little tortoise, Torkoal.
Yeah, so if the Tapu Fini were to switch in, oh my gosh, the Tapu Fini doesn't switch in and Niels goes for a Dynamax, and this could be the perfect turn to kind of read and go for Sleep Powder on the Venusaur. From Long's end, since you're a game up, I'm very curious to see what's going to happen and how much mind games these two players are playing against each other.
Oh, 100%. And I think that is already what we're seeing as the Palkia goes for the Dynamax. Sleep Powder tries to target the Palkia, but unfortunately does miss as the Palkia goes for the Max Quake into the Torkoal slot. Picks up a one-hit KO there, Evan, and gives itself as well as its partner Pokemon that lovely special defensive boost.
Yeah, Palkia saying, bro, I missed a Hydro Pump just now. Let me avoid the Sleep Powder, and it does. It reveals the Life Orb here. However, wow, what a good play. So Porygon 2 goes for the Trick Room because Niels was confident to remove the slot on the Torkoal's end. And there could be a chance that, Palkia would be the fastest on the field as the turns play out. But I think with that Calyrex Ice in the back, Long probably has a game plan to kind of preserve it all the way to the end.
Well, yeah, exactly that, and I think that's kind of the trade-off that you have to expect as a Venucle sort of player. That Sleep Powder, yeah, it's amazing, but when it lands, it's amazing, not when it misses, unfortunately, for Lon's sort of strategy there. That could have worked out quite well for them, because they would have at least been able to be in a beneficial situation of having a Torkoal on the field while putting that Palkia to sleep and wasting that one turn of Dynamax. But all of a sudden, we just got a whole different game here, Evan.
Yep, I think Long Dynamaxing the Venusaur does make sense because it does help Venusaur gain a little bit of bulk and at the same time deal that very important Vine Lash. However, the Eerie Impulse, correctly done, well played by Niels to go for exactly what it has to do. So here comes the Max Quick actually into the Indeedee's Protect. So Long really has to make very good reads here to try and get back in the game because I think Palkia is just proving to be way too bulky.
Yeah, exactly, and I think that's why Long at least focused down on that Palkia and making sure they got rid of him in that game one. It makes a lot of sense, but of course we are going to be seeing, even though at -2 of its special attack and not being able to deal that much damage at all, the Vine Lash has been set up. It is on the field. It will be chipping 1/6 of both of Niels' Pokemon right now every turn.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to mention, like back in game one, we saw so many RNG, like Hydro Pump missing, Sleep Powder actually missing once. Both Pokemon from Niels and actually waking up on turn 1. But these are kind of the things that you have to take into account when playing Pokemon and when using a very volatile team with moves that can miss. So I think both players really need to dig deep and find sort of the best middle ground play or the play that makes the most sense moving forward, right? So here comes the foul play and the Max Quick double up is able to take the Indeedee down, but this just allows Venusaur to go for an extra move. However, we have to remember that Venusaur is at -2 special attack.
Yeah, definitely. -2 special attack, whilst both the Palkia and the Porygon are at +2 of their special defense, which makes a lot of sense at this point. I think the Vine Lash Evan is doing more damage than any sort of output from the Venusaur.
Yeah, true. The Max Flare was interesting. Going for Max Weather Ball, there could be a chance that Niels goes a little bit greedy to hard switch his Calyrex Ice in for the Porygon 2 slot. So Long was trying to catch that, unfortunately doesn't get it. And here Long is now left with his last 2 Pokemon in Venusaur and Calyrex Ice. Calyrex Ice could still have a chance to try and fight back because there could be a chance the Glacial Lens can crit.
Yeah, exactly that, and I think we are still within Trick Room if I'm not mistaken, so Calyrex is sort of in a more beneficial position right now as opposed to this Palkia and maybe even perhaps the Porygon 2. We have seen the foul play come out from the Porygon 2, so it makes sense for it to try to target down the Calyrex and slow down any sort of potential chance Long has back into this game, but the Palkia has to be aware of any potential KO through a Glacial Lance.
Here comes the foul play from the Porygon 2. We saw the damage it did in the last game, but wow! Yo, this is substitute. Like back in week 1, we saw who was it? Shoma Honami go for a substitute Gastrodon, and here we have another Trick Room substitute Pokemon, and that just allows the Calyrex to survive for another turn, which is quite cool because that takes the attention away from the Venusaur, and the Venusaur is now going for a Max Quick. It's pretty strategic to help Calyrex with special defense boost. But back in game 1, we saw that Long, had the 4v2 situation. He still had a lot of tools, but in this game, the tables have turned and Niels is the one with all the tools and all 4 Pokemon still online and available to switch out and switch in to get a good position.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, though, we do have to take into consideration right now the speed tiering amongst both of these, or all of these Pokemon right now. Because we've got the Porygon 2 that does threaten the Calyrex, but we've also got the Calyrex that can threaten the Palkia. So it's just going to be dependent a bit on how these turns play out right now. I think the Venusaur just wants the Trick Room to be done, so it can just click the Sleep Powder button, but the Incineroar brings in that Intimidate and potential Fake Out if the Sector Rain is gone next turn.
So what was once a Tapu Fini back in Game 1 is now an Incineroar. So Niels really just has that ace up his sleeve with the Incineroar being able to switch in. Oh, but that's a Mental Herb props from the Calyrex. That's kind of funny because Porygon 2 happens to be faster than the Calyrex Ice in Trick Room. We saw back in Game 1 that Long's Calyrex Ice is faster than Niels's, so it makes sense for the Porygon 2 to move first, and with that Mental Herb actually makes the foul play back to neutral damage, so Niels is really in control in this match, and with that unfortunate Sleep Powder miss back in turn 1, things would have gone differently, but still I would say Niels managed it pretty well and managed to make full use of that opportunity with the Palkia Dynamax and make so much impact in this game.
No, yeah, exactly. And all of a sudden, we're in a situation that Niels has all of that pressure right now. 4 versus 1 deficit for Lon is not the best situation. We do see Lon go ahead and select the forfeit button. Of course, wants to go back to the drawing board. Didn't work out, unfortunately, for Lon in that game 2. It went extraordinarily well for Niels, however. So I think Lon, like you said, is going to have to try to dig deep about what sort of adjustments they can make going into this game 3, as we saw a lot can change if you allow that Palkia to survive and get a Dynamax going.
Yeah, at the same time, a lot can change if you hit that Sleep Powder on turn 1. But as players, I feel like you just have to remain calm and keep thinking of the best situations, right? Think things through and not let that amount of a little bit of hex affect you, because Long was actually 1 game up. If he hit that Sleep Powder, he would have been pretty comfortable in Game 2, but now he has lost Game 2 and he's kind of in a back against the wall situation. And in Game 3, we're just reset, right? Anyone can win that game and win the whole set. So I think both players, through Games 1 and 2, have so much information, right? We saw a White Herb. We actually noticed that Safety Goggles, I'm not sure if Niels actually caught it, right? Safety Goggles on the NBD. So both players are going into this next game with good information from the opponent. And let's see how things play out. Wow, we're going back to the turn 1 leads.
Yeah, turn 1 leads indeed. I think Niels feels quite confident, at least with this sort of setup. From their side of the field, we see Porygon 2 actually setting up the drought for a change. That's quite more than welcome change, to be honest, as opposed to the Torque Roll, but because of course, its traceability. And we got the situation that Venusaur, Evan, is going ahead and potentially threatening with either A, a Sleep Powder if he's not in the back, or B, Vine Lash, huge amount of damage, and not going to go down to a Palkia Dynamax if it so chooses to.
Yeah, so here we go again. This is a puzzle, right? If any one of you know of Chef VGC on Twitter, the puzzle here is Toko is always gonna be the last to switch out and get the Indeedee in. And if Porygon 2 switches first, the Tapu Fini would come in and Indeedee would change the terrain back to Psychic Terrain. And Niels is actually doing something very different. It's not switching the Tapu Fini in at all. And wow, we see a Dynamax come straight from Long. Not opting to go for the high variance Sleep Powder, and things are all of a sudden playing out so differently from Game 1.
Yeah, they really are. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Palkia go for the Dynamax right now as well. But it does not, as the Vine Lash will go into that slot, deal so much damage, and all of a sudden we are in a scenario of Game 1 just without the Fini on the field, which will of course allow this Porygon 2 to go for the Eerie Impulse into the Venusaur, dropping its special attack now down to -2, and Palkia has the mantle of Trick Room Setter.
Wow, what an interesting play. I think that makes so much sense. Using the Porygon 2 to go for Eerie Impulse and let Palkia do the job of setting up the Trick Room, and now Venusaur is really just the slowest on the field. And essentially wasting the Venusaur's Dynamax because you went for an Eerie Impulse onto it, even on turn 1. Venusaur, I think the only thing it has going for it would be to set up that Vines, right? But I think Niels is playing towards an end game of stalling out both Dynamax and Vines, and maybe get someone else in the back, possibly Incineroar or Calyrex Ice to Dynamax.
Yeah, but we did see that game one strategy didn't work out that well for Niels. Hopefully it will for themselves in this game 3. But a Max Quake comes out from the Venusaur, and it has taken up the responsibility of now setting up its own special defense against both of these Pokemon here, even though it will mainly be against this Palkia. But let's find out if it even survives this turn due to the Vine Lash.
Yeah, I think good read from Long in the previous turn, protecting the Indeedee, because like it's probably an easier target for Niels to double up into it and try his best to take it out. So Palkia gets caught by the Protect, and now Palkia just goes down like that. So I guess Venusaur did its job, like part of his job, right, to take down that Palkia on the opposing end. But here comes the free switch into Calyrex Ice.
Yeah, and this is a bit tough, right, if you're Lon, because you want to be able to position yourself to the point where you have the Torkoal on the field in Trick Room, underspeeding the Calyrex Ice Rider, but you don't have it on the field right now if you're Lon. You've got Venusaur and Indeedee female, so you got to be very cautious about your switches here, as we do see the Venusaur is very scared of a Max Hailstorm focus onto that slot. Will be switching out now for Lon with this Torkoal.
Here we go. Does Niels actually read it and go for a Max Quake? He doesn't. So still no Dynamax. Playing pretty patiently, waiting out Venusaur's last turn of Dynamax. Go straight for the Glacial Lens, which makes perfect sense, right? It could be Calyrex Ice is more or less like more useful going for spread damage, and that's very impressive damage down onto the Indeedee.
Yeah, exactly that, and I think just going for the Expanding Force here, maybe just expecting Niels to go for the Eerie Impulse into either, you know, the female Indeedee, or maybe anticipating that Follow Me would make sense there. But even though Lon is in a situation where they do have that Torkoal on the field, it has some damage dealt onto its HP, so unless there's a Helping Hand play coming out here, it will not be dealing as much damage as it naturally would be.
Yeah, I think the Torkoal switch-in, you know, like Venusaur mid Dynamax switching into a Torkoal, that's a very good play. Long is understanding that he is really running out of Trick Room turns, and like you said, if Indeedee were to go for Helping Hand and Eruption, let's see if this Calyrex is, you know, the bulky Trick Room one that we know it to be and is able to survive. Because we do know that, I believe, Porygon 2 should be able to go down with Torkoal's power.
Oh, and let's find out Eruption. Oh, it's enough to pick up the KO on Porygon 2, but not on Calyrex Ice Rider, as we are going to be seeing that weakness policy proccing, being able to make this a huge juggernaut of an Ice Rider, going with a +2 in its attack, Max Quake into that Torkoal slot, picking up an easy KO, boosting itself up to +1 special defense stages, as well as giving itself a bit of a treat, a further +1 in its attack due to that Chilling Neigh ability, now bringing up to +3.
Yeah, apologies, just now I thought I saw like a White Herb on the Calyrex Ice, but oh wait, no, White Herb's on Long side. Yeah, yes. This Calyrex Ice mirror is messing me up. But I think the game is still not over for Long, because Niels is actually down to his last 2 Pokemon. Yeah, we still don't know what that last Pokemon is in the back, and like I didn't really count the Trick Room turns, so the Calyrex Ice on Niels' end might still be in a little bit of a predicament on this turn.
Yeah, and I think maybe perhaps a Follow Me and Eruption there could have been the play. I guess you have to be taking into consideration if you're able to pick up the KO on the Porygon 2 at that range, but perhaps it may have been enough to at least still exercise some threat coming out from this Torkoal and try to utilize as many of these Trick Room turns that are remaining, because you're in a scenario where the Venusaur, it's under Trick Room, it's got the sun up, it is not happy.
Yeah, I think still a very like interesting scenario and board state, and the game could still go either way. I'm pretty sure this is this one last turn of Trick Room, so Long really has to play very carefully to like use the Indeedee to help protect the Venusaur, but this doesn't look like the play that I expected.
Yeah, ooh, as we're going to be seeing a Protect and the Darkest Lariat from the Incineroar, trying to focus down on that female Indeedee, not being able to do so. And we do see the Earth Power from that Venusaur. It goes into the Incineroar slot, will be proccing a Sugar Berry, whilst also quite beneficially for itself dropping the special defensive stage of that Incineroar to -1 right now as the sun is no longer present, as well as Trick Room.
So in that last turn, that was a bit curious because we do know that Calyrex should be able to move first. So it was a very strange max guard coming out from the Calyrex, and now it can easily fall prey to any of the attacks coming out from the Venusaur and the Indeedee. Indeedee actually goes for the Protect instead. Sleep Powder actually hits the Calyrex eyes.
Yeah, it does, as the Follow Me did come out from that female Indeedee, which will mean, of course, the Darkest Lariat is 100% guaranteed going into that slot and picking up that KO. So, bit questionable previous max guard, like you pointed out there, Evan. I think you had all of the momentum going for yourself right there. You want to at least try to exercise any sort of damage output, especially from a +3 Calyrex Ice Rider, right, in Dynamax form. To your advantage, and all of a sudden we've got a situation where we're outside of Trick Room. You can go for Sleep Powder as long as there's no and we've seen the confirmation of Sugar Berry on that Incineroar, which means there is no safety goggles at least on there, and there is no Tapu Fini waiting in the back.
Yeah, but I think in this case, like going for moves that hit 100% might make more sense instead of relying on Sleep Powder from the Venusaur. And the Calyrex has a little bit of a saving grace. I think it has 1 or 2 max quick boost up. Wow, it actually gets a turn 1 protect. Niels has been getting sort of 3 for 3 turn 1 protects in this game. Long actually ignores the fact that to target into the Calyrex eyes and go straight for that life orb Earth Power into the Incineroar. Cleanly is able to take it out, so is in a very, very good position and very commanding even.
Oh, 100%. I think that pretty much spelled it. The outcome, I think, of that match, not being able to completely utilize that Calyrex Ice Rider. But then again, we do have the fact that Lon still did have additional resources available to themselves. They still had that Calyrex Ice Rider, which was maximum HP. So it still would have been quite tough, regardless of that max guard or not, on being able to bring this back. As we're going to be seeing Frenzy Plant picking up the KO and giving Vietnam that additional win, which of course means, Evan, they are now officially have won week 3 of this bout. 5-2 versus Belgium right now.
Yeah, if I'm not wrong, I think that secures the win for Vietnam simply because Vietnam gets 2 wins and then Belgium gets 2 losses instead. So congratulations to Vietnam for making it through. But what a close game. Like, the game actually went all the way to game 3, went all the way down to the last few Pokemon. I think it really came down to Niels really just running out of Trick Room turns, unfortunately. So it comes down to the timing of the moves and how he managed to play the mid towards the end game. And unfortunately that Torkoal switch in with that Helping Hand Eruption just did too much damage into the Calyrex Ice. Maybe that made Neil play a little bit more defensively.
Yeah, and I think also something worth noting, we saw Calyrex Ice Ride on Neil's side max game 1 and game 3. Lost those both. Max with Palkia game 2. Is that maybe a bit of a hint of what could have gone right or wrong for Niels there? Maybe Palkia was the more optimal Dynamax choice there as opposed to that Calyrex Ice Rider?
Yeah, so maybe like if you were calling that the Venusaur is bound to Dynamax instead of risking a Sleep Powder, maybe Dynamax that the Palkia to go toe to toe. But I thought like it could have been a different like scenario altogether. And yeah, I'm not sure. We'll just have to see how like the players play out in terms of their flow chart. Because I thought that turn 1 like Eerie Impulse plus Trick Room plan was actually a not bad idea, right? Like it kind of worked out. But in the end, in the macros view of things, Niels was the player that ran out of Trick Room turns.
Yeah, and I think that my point kind of leads to the fact that there's still a Torkoal available for long, right? And that is not what Calyrex Ice Rider wants to be going up against, especially in Trick Room. So I think that is kind of the point where at least Palkia, if it is the Dynamax choice, it can resist those fire type moves by ×4, right? ×4 resist is amazing, especially on the Dynamax mon. But I mean, it's still tough. I think both players played exceptionally. They did really well. It was some very cool predictions there from both players, and I really, really enjoyed that. And I think they were able to give us a set to remember, in all honesty. But of course, congratulations to Team Vietnam for being able to clinch that progression onto the group stages. Of course, like you said, Evan, it was toe-to-toe. They were both tied, I believe, on 3 points. It was whoever wins this match that will definitely be able to progress on to the next stage. So
Yeah, so for Group F, Peru and Vietnam would be moving on. So commiserations to Team Belgium and Team Dominican Republic. We were able to feature a lot of you guys' matches. So really thanks for playing, and then really don't give up. Like I think a lot of these players are budding players and managers in future grassroots team leagues, right? So always keep active in the community, right, and continue playing. I think this match as a closing thought, I think both of us as casters, we really learned a lot, right, in terms of the flow chart, trying to approach Trick Room, Cataract's Ice Mirror.
Yeah, exactly that. I think it's definitely all down to the details of the flowchart, right? But regardless, I think both trainers did well. Huge congratulations, like we said, to Team Vietnam. Commiserations, of course, to Belgium. Shout out to Shmon. And that will be us for this third match before we hop on to the fourth stream match of today, which is going to be between Japan versus Austria. Hirofumi Kimura versus Alexander Kun. That is a very spicy one. I'm looking forward to it. And we'll be right back from the break to be able to feature to you lovely people at home. So don't go anywhere.